This is the 8-9 combo. I'm Brett McKay and Harry Jones. For the first time in a long time, our Test rugby fortunes have been switched. Hello, mate. How you doing?
How's it, Brett? Yes, I did attend both testicles, which is what I'm calling them. And if World Rugby doesn't want me to call them testicles, then have more than two. Just get a
Yeah,
third, and then we can have a
yeah.
decider. Wouldn't have mattered that much to you guys, but for the Irish and the
You would
Springbok
like it.
fans leaving Durban, driving through the fires back to Josie to the big smoke, everyone was just saying the same thing. Oh, I wish we had one more, just
Yeah.
one more.
Well, I can partly answer that, and we'll come back to that in my G's, in fact. So I'll come back to that. Notice the kit today.
Beautiful province.
I know that you're a little bit down. You rang me miserable and mopey from Durban on at your lunchtime on Sunday, and so I thought I'd wear the Western Province jersey you sent me a few years ago just to cheer you up a little bit. So
think
that's
would
my
have been
present to you.
nice. Would have been nice if we had some more province players in the team. I think Efran Ruiz was running Broncos with Monty Lubbock, and I was really interested to see because they were going full out, and Ruiz was not that far behind Lubbock, which means
Yeah,
that he
right.
had the speed. It would have been nice to see him mowing some Irish down instead of Quacha getting quachad.
I wonder if he might get a chance this weekend against Portugal. It is episode 23 of the 8-9 Combo Rugby Podcast. Thank you so much for bringing us into your rugby week. So let's break away down the short side for another week with cheers and jeers. I know you're not very happy, but what have you got for me to celebrate this week?
Well, besides the cheers for red-headed flyhalves, who I've always been a big proponent of, tame headnets, shout out. I will praise and cheer the return of the old wise men. Connor Murray putting in 17 minutes and steering the ship.
Yeah.
Bowden Barrett, who's not a young man anymore, doing the chip volley, the rare chip volley in the air down the sidelines and looking like he owned the match. There's something about old players. LaRue in the week before in Loftus, there's some old players can seize the moment sometimes and make you remember why you love them so.
Yeah, that's a really good shout. That's a really good shout. I was listening to the rugby pod earlier today, and they had Dan Bigger on it as a guest, and he said, they were talking about Bowden Barrett's performance, and he said, I tell you what, he's got a big future in the game, this kid.
Yeah, Maro Itoje also, I should point out, he had kind of a renaissance as well. Just scourge of the lineouts. What's your jeer?
Courtney Law's got better with age. My jeer is kind of me, myself, and it's to do with the two tests thing. And I put out a post on Sunday that I'm still trying to work out why it's these test series are all into two tests. And I probably should have done a little bit of digging around, and I actually found the answer. And it goes back to an agreement dating back to 2017 that was made in San Francisco. It is literally called the San Francisco Agreement, where all the basically top tier countries agreed in the year after a World Cup to host so-called tier 2 countries for a test. And so that is why Ireland has been there in South Africa for two tests. Wales has been in Australia. England has been in New Zealand for two tests only. And now this week coming, South Africa are playing Portugal, Australia are playing Georgia, etc. So it's actually an agreement that is made years ago, and it wouldn't have happened in 2020 because of the COVID pandemic, of course. But that's where it's dating back to. There is actually rhyme and reason to it. So I'm mentioning that because the original post I put up is still getting, it's been viewed like 35,000 times and is still being viewed. So I'm just trying to get that message out there that there is actually a reason for this.
Yeah, it does. It's dissatisfying, in a sense, because like Daniel Herbert said, the struggle to make test matches that are not part of an organized tournament to make them profitable is really important. And for the casual fan, I'm to say this, casual fan, which Durban is basically all casual fans. Loftus is all really grumpy and incredibly angry fans, even when you win. But casual fans in Durban really would have liked the idea of so what's it for? So what happens now? Nothing. Nothing.
We just go our separate ways.
We just all return to our irrefutable arguments that we're the best. No, we're the best forever.
Exactly. And the little tidbit that I saw extra in the reference, and it was in an old Sydney Morning Herald article, said that World Rugby is actually underwriting these tests this week, which is which is interesting. So anyway, we enjoyed our first repeat guest, Sam Larda, so much last week that we've decided to do it again. So our repeat of a repeat guest is coming up next. Right now, in fact. We very much love speaking to this week's guest back in late February when we were still very much finding our feet in our brand new podcast surrounds. And given that we spoke to him as international rugby gripped the Northern Hemisphere, it only makes sense that we do it again as the international season moves south, and proving that there is still room for another cricketer turned rugby writer on the 8-9. Please welcome back Charlie Morgan. Hello, mate. How you doing?
Charlie.
Hi, mate. Thank you so much for having me. What an honour.
Yeah, no, you're very welcome. My intros, Harry, might be turning a bit rough. I've either brought Charlie down to my cricket ability or I've lifted myself to his writing ability. I'm not quite sure.
That'd be a big lift. No, I'm just kidding. No, like it's also, Charlie, thanks for telling us about our green room. There's a green room associated with StreamYard. Shout out to the Yard, where we have actually a virtual room where people sit, and apparently we have a watt bike in there. That's outstanding. Yeah. What else is in that room?
Snacks,
well, it just I think I maybe magicked up because the software told me to get ready. So that was what I needed. That's what I needed to get these pins warm and ready to go.
Just have a look around there, Charlie. Is there a travel budget there somewhere? Because I've never seen
it. maybe underneath this watt bike, but it's pretty heavy.
Yeah, righto. Fair. We have had a really intriguing weekend of Test rugby, haven't you? You've obviously been buried in the New Zealand-England series, but you would have cast your eye over most of them, I can imagine.
Yeah. It's fantastic. It's obviously very different kind of being at this vantage point and not being out there. We sent Telegraph sent a couple of my senior colleagues out there. So the things you miss there, and kind of listening to Harry being at both of the South Africa Ireland games, you get a bit envious because you miss those insights when you're early there watching the warm-ups and things like that, and maybe the tweaks that what teams are going through and what maybe to expect. So you end up in, if you're covering them from back here, you end up with sort of a TV marathon that begins at 8 a.m, goes through to sort of mid-morning, and then have you showered by the time the South Africa game's on? I don't know. That's always a sort of always a gamble. But no, very very different, but still just as fascinating, and just seeing those different ones. And again, Harry's point on the drawn series, meaning that the irrefutable arguments kind of return perfect, I guess, in a way. Just keep that intrigue and keep that antagonism going.
Yeah. Harry, are the Boks playing Ireland in November?
No, so it'll be another year. It'll be November of 2025 that this sort of like charming but sort of toxic rivalry will continue to develop.
Charming but toxic. That's a good way of putting it. What were your big takeaways from the big series, Charlie? What stood out for you? What did you go, oh, wow, about?
Oh, again, I've genuinely written down here the value of Grownups, and I think so Mara Itoje, for me, the England New Zealand series was sort of dominated by how much has this guy played. This guy's been on an exhausting schedule. He's broken sort of these very odd quotas that the RPA, RFU, and England Rugby sort of put together over player minutes, which never are taken particularly seriously. I think Freddie Stewart broke his previously, and it's, it doesn't change the fact that if a head coach wants to pick you, he's going to pick you. But what Itoje did was really reinforces his value, and actually the value of having that line out strategist, because the All Blacks line out during the World Cup was phenomenal. They scored so many tries from it. They had this brain trust of, I know one of them was starting, weren't they, generally, but Retallick and Whitelock. So in their first series after Retallick and Whitelock not being there anymore, that was always going to be a chief battleground. And I felt sorry for Itoje because he couldn't have done anything more. It was laughable. Did you know lineouts are pretty comical when they go to total shit, and the All Blacks one just it was shocking. It was absolutely shocking. They kind of resurrected it a little bit towards the back end of those tests, but for England not to win on the back of Itoje's work would have been pretty sickening for Itoje. But then again, another grown-up, props to Bowden Barrett. I've been watching back a bit of the sort of kicking battle in that second test, and he skewed one out on the full in the second half. But apart from that, he was immaculate.
Yeah, the disruption to your team psyche when your lineout's wobbly it goes way beyond the stolen ball of that line out or this line out. It's you don't know what to do. You're actually not sure how to base your platform in the 22. I thought you had an interesting point in your article, and everyone should read this, which is only 40 points conceded in New Zealand by England. You would have gone into that saying, I'll take those. Give me the 2020, I can score 21, 22.
Yeah. And then the kind of, again, and this is tough, right? Because it's a 2-test series against the All Blacks away from home, and it's a young, developing England side, and you think, they've gone so close. So is that a mark of progress? And it is, but it's also one that they will look back in next year, the year after, all the way up to this World Cup, going, geez, how have we not got over the line in at least one of those games? No matter the Eden Park factor, and not scoring a point in the last half hour of both tests. Of the first test, that's painful enough, but not to score a point in the last half hour of both is a real. I think it will be gut wrenching for them moving forward, but it clearly gives them a lot of positives to move on from. But then that, I guess, can feel like a mountain to do. That doesn't just happen. They've got to work really hard to make those positives into progress and meaningful progress. And guess what? The All Blacks are next at Twickenham, so that feels like a must win.
Oh, you said so. In that sense, you do have a third game decider between the All Blacks and England.
Yeah,
true.
Yeah.
But you said something interesting in the article too. You said there was a missing connection between a big bopper carrier, an 8, a proper 8, to kick to the midfield, because you've got these athletes on the wings now. You've got athletes on the wings that can match any All Black.
They're a funny team, England. I think Steve Borthwick is a fascinating coach, and you mentioned the defence there. He's built a system, and I remember this really well, and I've actually not stopped thinking about it much since when you mentioned Swivelly Wiggins on my first appearance here. And they've got one of them in Feo Boso, who'd actually just come off the bench, hadn't he, in February against Scotland, and they clearly see Slightholme as someone who can fit into a system. Yeah, but to go back to that question, their attack is almost a you'd associate England's attack, I think, back in the day, up until the last World Cup with. So you've got Manu Tuilagi there. You've got a way by which you can have a really intricate first phase move that gets you on the front foot, and then you might get an easy rolling penalty or an easy not rolling penalty, an easy offside penalty. What England are having to do, because they've got Earl at 8 and Lawrence at 12, attacking from 13, wearing 12, however that's working, is that they've got to be really precise and intricate off first phase, and that just is breaking down quite a lot. So in the first test and in the second test, the amount of times that they had good first phase platform born out of good kick pressure or however they'd earned it, or a penalty or however they'd done it, and threw that away, again, they can look at that as a positive and go, imagine if we get momentum from a couple more of those strike moves, or how are we going to get, do we need to change our team to get momentum from those strike moves? Do we need a gnarly old 12 that they don't have, or do they need a good shout that I saw was Alfie Barbary. I'm sure you guys are familiar with. It's been an absolute hype train around him since he was sort of 12 years old, it seemed. But he's a big bopper at 8, and he's a big heavy jackal threat, which they don't really have either. So it's just, do you know what? I know you guys will despise Bazball, I'm sure, and everything that comes, but they are going to be a really interesting team to follow. Just because there's so much intrigue around certain positions and how they're going to evolve over the next World Cup cycle, and also because I imagine they'll be quite good at claiming moral victories as well, which Ben Stokes' lads are pretty good at that too.
Coming home.
It's coming home, except when it doesn't. This might finally be the way, Charlie, they get to move Ben Earl out to 12.
They did it in that. That's so Steve Borthwick, what an interesting guy. Like Eddie Jones was all about theory, and I think Steve Borthwick's more of an action sort of man. And he, again, in that first test against Japan, which was kind of the opposite of the All Blacks test, because I think in retrospect that was more impressive, because Japan were amazing out of the blocks, and England only conceded 3 points in what was a real blitz at the start. But he had a look at Earl at 12. Maybe just with that extra, because Earl spends a lot of time in the back line from those line-out strikes anyway. So maybe just having that extra guy with a Barbary might help. I'm not sure. There's also a danger of sort of placing all of your eggs in a basket of one player being able to totally kind of revamp a aside, and that doesn't happen. But yeah, the swivelly wingers was just a way in for me to always think about what comes first, the system or the player, and actually the systems come first with England, and then I think they're adding players that really, really suit it, and hoping that they grow into the role and become these grown-up test players that are so valuable.
I didn't think they had the type of players. I didn't think you had those to recruit. So I called them swivel hips. I actually named them leckerbacks now. A leckerback is someone who can wear a scrum cap for no apparent reason, but then we know it gives them special powers to go chase balls and still chase back and scramble. And I think you do have those guys now. I literally, that Freeman catch and score was one of the best tries of the weekend. One of the best tries of the year. He outleaped, was it Tele? He outleaped clear air above him. Next thing is you have IBF, IFW, just tracking back, scrambling. Furbank instead of Freddie. 2 years ago, who was everyone saying that England's best player was? Freddie Stewart.
Yeah.
Nowhere to be seen now in the starting.
Yeah, and that's a system. That's a system play, right? Freeman's one of those really intriguing guys because they make him chase kickoffs, whatever wing they're kicking to. His aerial skills are really, really quite special, and yet the evolution for this team might see him move to 13 with Slightholme. So Slightholme's again another really interesting guy. Got a look under Eddie Jones when he was really, really young. If you remember, his dad John is a Jonah Lomu rugby legend. Had the handoff on Jonah Lomu rugby, so obviously clearly very, very, very valuable. But has been sort of earmarked for big things for a long time. Really aggressive in and around the breakground, which leckerbacks are absolutely that, right? So yeah, he fits that. He fits that bill. And
Leckerbacks is going to appear in copy in the next 2 weeks, and I'm not going to take you seriously forever again, Charlie. That's
hashtag Leckerbacks.
That'll go down well with the Telegraph comment section of these. But one moment which actually was genuinely made me laugh out loud watching this test series towards the end of it, and Seve Reece having given an interview at the beginning of the test series saying, look, we've been concentrating on ourselves. We don't know too much. I don't know too much about the England wingers personally. And Ollie Slightholme got the ball, looked at him, sort of skipped for a bit, and then burnt him on the outside. That doesn't happen to Seve Reece, who's a really explosive athlete. But it does mean that Seve Reece wasn't lying about not knowing about the England wingers.
Really true. How far forward do you think Steve Borthwick has had to mark his improvement? Like, he would have been hoping to get X far forward in his progression. How far forward of that do you think he's got now?
Well, I think he's maybe in front of where he thought he might be, but I think he would have desperately wanted one win just to buy a little bit of time. I saw somebody, I think it was Fowler, mentioned onto like how much has a game, how much has that Ireland win bought him time or bought him goodwill, and I think it really did. That win over Ireland was like, right, okay, that's what happens when they're really slick off kick return and they add really robust defence to that. They can be a really good side who pick off fives and sevens, and then also disrupt sides on the gain line at set piece when everything's going well. I think that he's maybe closer to par now, but I still think he's above par, because as England head coach, you just seem to have to, and please stop me if there's a bit of arrogance in this, but I feel like you have to spin maybe more plates than some other test head coaches, because you've got this hype coming through of pick this guy now. This guy's so exciting. He's carved up the Premiership, and TNT Sports are telling me how good he is. So why isn't he in the first team? And then you've got, well, actually, there are fundamental areas of the game that are a long way behind the 8 ball. So the scrum, you've got an England scrum now where in the last quarter you're giving up 2 set piece penalties.
How's that possible, Charlie? How can England not have tight heads? How was that even possible?
So we did a bit of digging around this last November, and it was actually off the back of some really good work from the RFU. They introduced these Type 5 camps for young players, and that was, I was sort of saying, is this a reaction to what's happened at the last 2 World Cups? And they're saying, well, actually, no, we're not going to. We don't want to say that on record, I think, is what they were saying. But what it's a reaction to is age group coaching really being about how the game is a game of movement and playing to space, and let's get those type 5 players with really soft hands being able to play pullback passes and tip passes and things like that. And maybe a little bit of neglect had crept in. But having said that, the RFU deserve a lot of praise for being proactive with that. The England under 20 pack, who are in the final at the minute, are a load of monsters. Yeah. They've got some again, these players are so interesting. So Asher Poko Fajor, who's their loose head, actually emerged as a tight head for Sale and looked the goods. But actually but the RFU see him as a loose head, and I can see where that happens because he'll have to put on a bit of weight, I think, to be a loose head. There are tight heads in that team, Billy Seller and Afolabi Fasogbon. I think I probably butchered the second guy's name there, but they're really exciting. But then again, you've got this Premiership dichotomy. Billy Sellers, one of the most exciting tight heads in the country, but at Bath he's behind Will Stewart, the incumbent England tight head, Archie Griffin, who's the incumbent Wales tight head, and Thomas du Toit, who's not bad at rugby. So where's he going to get a game? So this is hopefully doing a piece this week on how quickly these guys can be fast tracked and what they need to do to get them the requisite game time to actually. Because Steve Borthwick's given a remarkable press conference where he said, "I need tight head props. I don't have them." So,
which is a huge admission for a coach, isn't it?
A massive admission when it's such a big area. And I'd say, just to go back, I think we mentioned it earlier, they have fudged the midfield a little bit as well. So they've got Henry Slade at 13 to lead the blitz defence because he's led that at Exeter, and he's a really good safety blanket for Manife Urboso, who's like a weapon in that system. But you've got Ollie Lawrence, who is probably their best midfield strike runner, and he's wearing 12, but he prefers to attack at 13 where he plays for Bath. But would he get exposed if he defended at 13? And I know Steve Borthwick, well, I know that people close to Steve Borthwick always say you overthink shirt numbers in the centres, but actually when you have players with those, you still have to play to those players' strengths and attributes. Yeah. And that's so there is a bit of a fudge going on there. And 12 is another position where England don't have loads of them at all.
So part of that, Charlie, is also the nines. Your nines are shooting up on a high line D. They're more aggressive. They're getting behind enemy lines, which means Manny's coming really far in. Like there's actually a huge flank open all the time. And they're just saying, we're going to catch you at source. You're not going to get to the third receiver ever. Second receiver will be tough. And even first receiver, maybe we'll have man and ball. That looks to me like that's requiring an incredible amount of fitness from your 9s and 12s and 13s.
Yes. And you wonder whether that's linked to them fading a bit in the sort of 55, 50 minute. But then again, they've got Aled Walters, who's a total genius, who is renowned for tailoring conditioning programs to tactics.
Well known in my part of the world, certainly.
Yeah, and I don't know how special that is. I imagine most conditioning coaches do that, but I think he's very, very good at doing that. Yeah, they set up Faye Urboso at like 12. I mean, he was on the right edge, but he was way beyond the near post for a.
He's looking at He's looking at Jordy Barrett. I mean, it's like,
it was nuts. It was absolutely acres of space. It was a third minute, and he actually ended up winning a turnover some 10 meters behind the gain line on the opposite touchline because they just went really, really far back. Do you know what the kind of the game that I always think of when I think about a blitz defense versus an attack that is going to try and change things is Scotland South Africa in the World Cup pool game. I was at that game in Marseille, and it was sort of Scotland ended it going, God, if a few more passes had stuck, we would have won that when we would have beaten the blitz. But there was one where Finn Russell, I think, threads it. Jesse Creel flies up and he threads it behind Jesse Creel to Hugh Jones, and Hugh Jones spills it, but he spills it under pressure because Cheslin Colby's basically done half a lap of a 400-meter track all the way up and back and is on Hugh Jones. It's absolutely nuts. Yeah, but you're right. It must be seriously demanding. We hear that I spoke to Exeter's defence coach Omar Muniem, who said that Henry Slade is remarkably cardiovascularly fit, as is George Furbank, because that fullback role is really, really important too.
You'd have to be.
But the challenge with having these distinct systems is you go into the Premiership where you're not playing week to week, and actually that might be a reason why this next All Blacks game will be quite difficult, because England will be cold as New Zealand were this time. So that's it. That's what they're dealing with.
It's a fair point. You mentioned Ireland before. What did you make of their split series with the Box, and bearing in mind that you've still got a slightly temperamental South African on this podcast who could blow at any moment?
He looks calm. He looks calm for now. I thought for the point about having to PR those series is really good and really important. So Rassie Erasmus did very, very well to do that, with a couple of rogue tweets as we're used to, a couple of rogue X's. I loved it. I loved that. God, you saw.
You've just managed to mute yourself, Charlie.
Sorry, I
see. You were saying Rassie Erasmus, rogue tweets, X, and then I think you were going.
Yeah, so Rassie Erasmus did really well to PR that with a few rogue X's, which kind of maybe was needed, because I could sense, clearly not in Ireland, but I could sense a little bit of weariness at the end of a long season. And then that Pretoria game really ignited it. I thought Ireland were so ballsy to bounce back from that, because they looked absolutely battered. And then did the battering. I was actually watching the start of the second one with my father-in-law, and when even Etzebeth came to the touchline with blood all over his face, we were going, right, okay,
whoa,
Ireland are up for it. And then Franco Mostert, who's the toughest, just so tough, upper echelons of tough, limping off. You're like, okay, they're standing up. They're standing up tall here. I thought, and again, it's such a cliche, right? But winning tests twice, 3 times, when they're that tight, and you've got that many quality players on both sides, and for Ireland to come back, loved Frawley's balls, not just for both of those drop goals, having missed one for Leinster, but that grubber.
Yes,
but I just thought, again, like England supporters just hate these attacking kicks, and then it's almost like, why have you done that? Oh, it's a good outcome. Okay, that's why.
That's why. Yeah,
and it's exactly that happened. So I thought, great, but it's just going to keep rumbling. I think like England, South Africa will be sick with not being able to just come through off the back of that surge they had at the start of the second half, but Ireland to hang on by their fingertips. Awesome. That's so
and find another gear. Like just the way that they were able to go, no, it's all right. We've got this. We're just going to nail 2 drop goals from beyond 40 metres. And I'm glad you mentioned the missed drop goal for Leinster in the final, wasn't it? In the Champions Cup final, because to still have the confidence as a player to go, no, I can still do this. This is fine. And then do it twice in the space of 5 or 6 minutes. I mean, we lamented, Harry, at the time after the Champions final whether Frawley might rethink that situation again. And not only did he rethink it, he absolutely nailed it.
He played really loose. His 20-minute cameo actually was the best number 10 performance in the series. It was actually I was picking a composite team to start. I have to write one, the Southern Hemisphere team of the series. But I started out with just doing each series, and it was actually interesting because the Irish players individually didn't really outplay their opposite numbers, except for Caelan Doris and Conor Murray, clearly, and then a couple others maybe stuck in. But the midfield was South Africa, the front row was South Africa. It was interesting. So the critical moments, they stepped up, and Andy Farrell, what a genius on plucking Jamie Osborne and putting him at 15 and acting like that was normal when he hadn't played there. And he performed really well. So I think on the battle of experiments, Rassie had Kwagga at 8. That failed. He went from 3 knock-ons in the first game to only 3 tackles in the second. He just didn't have the ability, the size, the gravitas to match with Caelan Doris.
He took that first hit up and even made a couple of meters post-contact. And I thought, oh, okay, here we go. This is on. And then I don't think his other 2 runs went quite so well.
he beat fewer defenders than Andre Pollard, and Kwagga was getting every kickoff. So that is your time for an 8 to make a defender miss you. So those experiments didn't work, and Rossi was a bit stubborn. Doesn't have a strong second man now, a wingman to say to him, Rossi, it's not a good idea. Let's shift course. So South Africa would probably say to themselves, if we just had a proper 8 in there, it might have been different. But I like 1 and 2 being that close. If 1 and 2 are not that close, then what's wrong with rugby?
Yeah, it's a fair point.
Yeah, I think that whole test scene is really interesting and really tight. And those two in France are in the upper state of it. And I wonder whether there's sort of a middle and then sort of another sort of 7, 8, 9, 10, 11 sort of really scrapping. Yeah. Andre Pollard did carry very angry from the backfield. He was bopping lads, which was
he smashed. I don't know who he smashed. He smashed someone proper. Like he put them on the ground and they had to look at him as he went by.
Yeah. Enjoyed it.
So how do you rate New Zealand now compared to France and Ireland, having had sort of more of a head-to-head? Do you think New Zealand's right there or thereabouts with Ireland, or a little bit behind for real?
But behind, yeah. I mean, wasn't
with Talik and White block outs.
That was every bit as bigger transition as I thought it'd be, and at 9 as well. Even so, Grownups, really good point on this. TJ Paranara looked like a grown up for the first half of that first test that was gonna boss the series and was gonna really turn the screw and really cause England to struggle. And then him going. And then also losing Finlay Christie, that was the moment actually. And fair enough. Like the All Blacks got through from that 54th ish minute where Finlay Christie went off as well, and you're going, this is the chance here for England, and that's where England faded. Having said that, New Zealand's scrum excellent, albeit against England, where everybody seems to be able to milk those penalties at the minute, or the top side seem to. Their attacking framework is sort of TBC, because I think, two things clearly. That's going to take a while to become accustomed to what Scott Robertson wants, but also because England really did put that under pressure with, I think, an intensity and maybe a sort of method that was slightly unconventional and unexpected. So they would looked a bit spooked by that, and there were a few snapshots throughout. Like when just before half time of the first test, where they went through 10 phases and eventually just going further and further back, and you're going, this looks like pure naivety happening, and they eventually gave up a jackal turnover that England kicked for 10-all, I think it was. I wonder whether they just try and keep Beauden Barrett on the pitch for 60 rather than 20, and how different that looks. And they're going to have Mo'unga back eventually before the next World Cup.
Exactly.
The rock star. So that changes a lot. And Roy Gard is a really good player for them at 9 too. So
it seems like everyone, all the teams seem to be finding a 15. Sort of like Osborne. There was Sasha came on for the Box. I don't know how much you guys saw Sasha, but he was absolute magic. Yeah, you had Tom Wright coming good for the Wallabies.
Right.
Yeah, Furbank sort of taking that jersey. It was an interesting sort of series. But what my question, Brett, for you is, what is the All Black shape and style of the Razor? Do we even know what it is yet? I couldn't.
No, and we sort of touched on this on Saturday night in the Test match post-mortem, didn't we? That New Zealand still look like they need to work out what they want to look like. And you mentioned there, Charlie, that if what they actually need is for Beauden Barrett to play 10 for an hour and not just 20 minutes, then that's a really interesting situation that New Zealand find themselves in, because that is a definite backward step. They've been so used to Richie Mo'unga running the shot with aplomb for as long as he has, that I think they didn't realise how much they would miss him. And it's become very, very apparent very, very quickly. And that's not something that we would normally think about a New Zealand setup.
To put that in the English context, Charlie, does George Ford come back into 10, or does Marcus have that jersey now?
Well, I think he comes back into 22, maybe. So Finn Smith is going to be a great player, but you'd maybe bring Ford on sort of around 55, 60, and just to maintain that impetus that England lost a bit. They've got a few forwards to come back as well to sort of into that 19 role. So Ollie Chesson they missed, and they'll fortify Loosehead with Ellis Genge. But overall, it's kind of a really good marker. That is perfectly put, Brett. That I think that New Zealand didn't really realise how much those absences were going to cost them, and it was right Damien McKenzie's time. But it's like, well, what does that mean? And is he really going to not skip a beat? And no, he didn't. But then again, you throw that back, and that's almost more gutting that England missed that opportunity, because that was coming down the pipe, right?
Sure.
They would have targeted. They would have known all these things before the series.
Yeah, just on George Ford, Dan Bigger in this week's Rugby Pod made an interesting comment on that about George Ford, and he went back to his time a few years ago. Gareth Anscombe was very much the number one fly half for Wales, and at that time, Bigger's role was to come on and play 25 minutes or so and close out games, bring them home, finish the job off basically. And so I think, that may well be George Ford's role going forward.
Yeah, the guy I always think about that is Kevin Mealami, that great All Black side. Just coming on the 16th and just being totally solid. And because
Kevin played at a height that I've never seen before since. He was literally like a mole. He was subterranean. Like you could not tackle him without getting carded, and he could clean rocks under you.
Yeah. I'm going to put a break there. That's a really good point. Really good point.
An actual demented mole.
And actually, good. Charlie, we'll get on to lessons learned and things that we might look for this third week of these July tests. But we should touch on Australia-Wales. What's been the general thought there in the UK about where this Wales team are, and what's been the observations, I suppose, of an Australian team on the rebuild with Joe Schmidt?
Wales, I have to say the outlook's pretty bleak. Just because that's nine test losses in a row. They had Jack Morgan going down on the eve of the series, felt really big.
They really missed him.
Yeah, Tommy Reffell was a great player. I get to watch him a lot in the Premiership, and he's an absolute dog in and around the breakdown. Jack Morgan maybe just a bit. They could have played them both, and because Jack Morgan's just that oomph. Carrying wise, he had an awesome World Cup, and he was injured for a lot of last year, but he would have been able to maybe just make that transition a little bit smoother between cycles and into sort of this second kind of period that Gatland's having. It's going to be a slow burn. It's going to have to be a slow burn over the course of the whole cycle, and it'd be interesting to see who they get back. They've got really promising players, Shinza and Jenkins at lock, and they are really resourceful. They were down to, I think they went on tour. They had Dylan Lewis, who didn't play. I can't remember whether he went on tour or not. Sorry,
don't think he did.
But they had 3 caps before the first test between their 2 tight heads in the 23, and Archie Griffin went pretty well. They gave up the scrum penalty, but they are sometimes resourceful at finding those gems and making those gems sort of grow into the shirt. They look naive, didn't they? Kind of understandably. And this is the kind of cool expression now that coaches use: taking a bit of pain. We're going to take a bit of pain while this team grows, and they are taking the pain. Having said that, as I say, Dowie Lake,
he was phenomenal.
Awesome player.
Absolutely phenomenal.
He's going to be a lot of fun on the British and Irish Lions tour next year, because I imagine he looks like a character, and just a real kind of presence about him as captain. Love his carrying. Carries as angry as Andre Pollard did in Durban, and
as low as Kevin Mealamu did. I don't think he got above knee height.
Yeah, and he's bigger. So that's a bigger stoop. Yeah, big old abdomen on him, hasn't he? Really like him as a player. They got to figure out the midfield. Did a piece before the tour on people going, trust me. Mason Grady isn't the 12 that Jamie Roberts was, or isn't going to be the same 12 or the same sort of fix as Jamie Roberts was back in the day. So they need to figure that out. But
I don't know. It doesn't look particularly hopeful. Australia, I am. On the other hand, I just think Schmidt, his intellect around the game, I just really enjoy. And the first try they scored was at once one of the best tries I've ever seen, genuinely, given the conditions, given where they went from, given the speed and the pace involved, but then also one of the least Joe Schmidt movements. I can imagine him just pulling his hair.
No. Oh yeah, design.
Well, so the interesting part there is, and I've touched on this for my Rugby Pass column this week. Michael Hooper on Stan Sport post match asked him about that try, and he asked him whether the Wallabies getting out of that situation with a pretty bloody lucky try, whether that frustrates him as a coach. And he's trying to say, do they almost need to learn the lesson of the risk there? And he went, no, Hoops, I'm never going to be frustrated about that. And that felt like such a non-Joe Schmidt answer.
Yeah, he does like control. He likes his starter plays, and I can almost see him saying, no, like just lie down and form a ruck so we can start a real starter play from that.
yeah, like that. Did you see that restart from the Under-20s World Cup?
Yes, the French.
It's like, what are they doing? Like, I just needed a ruck. I just wanted that ruck.
Yeah, just lie down.
What's going to be a really interesting journey as well is how, like, because coaches mellow, don't they? And coaches change and become more rounded potentially. Well, sometimes they don't, but I guess that's
Michael Checker. Yeah,
that's kind of a
good example.
That's kind of a journey that both Australia and Wales are potentially going to go through as these two sort of old stages learn about themselves as well as trying to kind of bring through another team and another sort of iteration of a team. But and particularly they having said that try was the least Joe Schmidt, the movement before half time where actually Lake ends it, I think, with a jackal.
20 odd phase on the Welsh line.
Schmidt ball, some of that was just like punching, and they've got, and actually, this, I doubt Schmidt would want to hear this, but I think that was partly what Eddie Jones was trying to do a little bit, just ensure that Australia have got that game because they've got the athletes to be able to bully sides close to the ruck, and they've got the nines as well. So I think that'll be really interesting. I've no doubt. I know there's maybe a bit of, again, I mean, it's super arrogant again, but it's like there's almost like are the Wallabies going to be good enough to grace the Lions with their presence in 2025? I've no doubt that they will be. I've no doubt that those tests will be hard fought, and I just there's just a healthy amount of fuck you about Schmidt as well. I think like he's coming. He really for the Bledisloe. Geez, can you imagine how punchy he's going to be?
Yeah. I think Harry, he's loving the idea of going into a test match series with Laurie Fisher on one side and Mike Cron on the other. Yeah, it's like he's going, I've got some of the best brains in international rugby right here. If I can't get this job done, I may never do it.
Yeah, Joe's stepping into a dream, right? He's almost like just the average guy who's following the bad boyfriend. So, the family loves him. Everyone's going to be great. Like, Joe, you're the best in comparison to what came before. But also lying before him, he has this gentle ascension of matches where Wales was the perfect starter opponent. Yeah. Now you got Georgia, test the set piece, which went the way of Australia. Maybe it won't this time. And they're just easing into it. But in the spectre waiting for everyone is we've got two freaking Lions coming.
Then we've got 2 box tests in Australia, then go to Argentina for 2 tests, then the Bledisloe test series either side. It's a great build-up.
A graph, you would just literally be a gentle ascending line. I thought it was a good test if it was Wainwright, Rafael, although Shawnee always calls him, was it Rafael or Raffel? What is it, Raffel or Rafael?
Yeah.
But I thought Wainwright Rafael is a great combination to test the biggest problem of Wallaby rugby for 4 years, which is ball retention. Can you clean? Can you resource the ruck in a legal way? And I thought that was actually perfect. My question to you, Brett, is who's the captain? Who's the Wallaby captain?
That's a really good question, because it could well be Liam Wright again this weekend. And if his shoulder's okay, then that would probably make a lot of sense to do that. But I don't think anyone knows. It probably could be Alan Alatoa, but Tanya Latupo is making a pretty good job of starting games at the moment and setting up the scrum platform to be Well, it's been dominant for the last 2 weeks. And Alatoa's just sort of come on and finished that job. It might even be someone like Jake Gordon, funnily enough, who's been really, really good. And that's a bit of a concession for me because I thought he was about 4th in line before this series. And he's been fantastic, Charlie, in these last 2 tests.
Yeah, it's really the captaincy issue for every test side is really interesting, isn't it? Because it's almost a window into how the coach is thinking. And Schmidt will want control in and around line 9, but he'll also want a running threat, and he'll want those kicking, passing skills to be absolutely bang. Yeah, because otherwise he is going to be going, no. Yeah. So he's a candidate too, for sure.
Yeah.
There's a bit of a Connor Murray to Jake.
Yeah,
Gordon,
I was thinking that.
You also Connor's not fleet of foot, but he finished 2 tries, one each test, because he just knows where to be, and he runs good lines. I think
Jake Gordon is Jake White. Jake Gordon is absolutely that player. Yeah,
he does run good lines.
He does. The lessons for the last week of these July tests, Charlie. What is do we see any major experimentation going around? Like where does England go this week? Are they just on their way back home?
No, they're done. That's it. That's the 13-month season. Yeah, over and out. Which they'll be. I mean, well, they will be really relieved, those players, and they'll get a break. But it's kind of it'll be tough. I hope Steve Borthwick gives himself a holiday. But also but his brain is. I'm sure he's very busy brain wise, and he'll be thinking ahead soon enough. 8. I think they're. It's not original to say this, but 3, 8, and 12 are really those positions for him, and all that entails. So a solid scrum, moving the ball away from the scrum, ensuring that they're getting impetus off first phase. Those are what won them and lost them. What to what would have been a potentially a seismic achievement. That's kind of how they fell short. So
no doubt,
big lessons, not original ones.
Yeah, Wales will finish their year in Brisbane on Friday night playing Queensland, a sort of a tour game that was added only about 3 months ago. But it probably actually provides Warren Gatland with a nice end of season opportunity to test a few things.
Yeah, they so spoke to Alex King before their attack coach, but any sort of, don't know whether he let slip or whether it was kind of common knowledge, but he was saying, we need that game to get game time into players that we don't necessarily have. So if you look out for someone like Mackenzie Martin at 8, super raw, hardly any games for Cardiff, but big guy, really kind of angry carrier, players like that I'd expect to play and just give them. They need options. They need options and depth in those positions. So it's actually it looks like an awkward fixture, to be honest.
Win. It could be.
But they need to make it beneficial for them, basically, by winning and having some of those younger players step up and go well.
It'll be interesting to see what sort of team Queensland can put together. And there's certainly been a few questions asked about whether players not required on Saturday for the Wallabies will be released back for Queensland this week. And that's a not unreasonable request, I think. So, it could be a real opportunity for Wales. It could be a real danger game too. And Queensland, no doubt, will go, let's finish our year with an international scout.
Yeah. Well, Queensland thinks it is a country, so it's perfect.
A shout out to our Queensland listeners.
But those games are, we touched on the Lions tour, didn't we? Sort of joke, but those games are just awesome for kind of provincial sides.
Oh, they are
club sides, and they don't happen a lot. So
the Brumbies beating the Lions in 2013 is still disgusting, Canberra. Let me tell you.
Yeah, I've no doubt.
Yeah. It's an interesting set of fixtures, isn't it? It's going to be great to see Georgia in Australia, Portugal in South Africa, Scotland. I think are just on tour for the next 6 months. They're in Chile this week, Uruguay next week. I think they're just doing a lap of South America. Uruguay hosting Argentina. Italy are in Japan as well. Samoa are hosting Italy, actually, I thought. I was staying correct on that one.
all of these sides are the sides that you fall in love with at the World Cup, and then you kind of
don't get to see again for 4 years
times, and then you go, where can I find it? Am I only watching highlights? Oh, that guy's you're missing these players develop, and then they come into the spotlight unless they play in leagues that you're familiar with, and then they come into spotlight over the World Cup. Portugal were just like intoxicating during the World Cup. They were awesome
so good. Yeah.
So that's going to be really interesting. See how they go.
Conferencing, guys. So, like, I don't know the last time a Portuguese person, I think it was 1488, Vasco da Gama or Bartholomew Diaz, maybe have wandered the wrong way.
Look, but where?
Why are the restaurants closed at 9?
It's a good point. Charlie, it's been another great chat. It's been fantastic to catch up with you and get your insights after these tests. It's been a really enjoyable set of July tests. It's been great to reconnect and read what you've been writing over these last few weeks. Thanks so much for giving up some time again.
Yeah, everyone go to the Telegraph if you want to know what happened with England or about England or to England. Charlie's your first one to read. I actually learned a lot from your articles, Charlie, for real. I'm not just flattering you. It's an interesting way of looking at the game. I don't think it's the same as everyone else. So everyone, take a look at it.
No, as I say, lads, super humbled. Massive imposter syndrome given who else you get on the pod, but I also really want that number 21 shirt. So
well, there we go. I'm
going to keep coming and keep inviting me. Thank you so much.
Look, it worked for Michael Atkinson. It still has worked for Michael Atkinson for years. So we'll keep locking you in, mate. We'll talk to you again soon.
Cheers.
This is the 8-9 Combo Rugby podcast with Brett McKay and Harry Jones. And that was fantastic, mate, to have Charlie Morgan back. We could talk to him for hours at a time.
Yeah, I love Charlie. Charlie's really into the game, the sport. It's also like personal connections. Like, I know this guy name dropping. He just loves rugby.
He just loves watching it and getting into the weeds. Yeah. His articles over the weekend have been fantastic. So I absolutely agree with your point before. You should absolutely check him out. We'll head around the grounds again, mate, and I'll give you a bit of a recap of the weekend's scores. Some of these we went through on Saturday night at the Test match post-mortem, but the full set reads like this. Italy beat Tonga 36-14 in Nuku'alofa. Scotland beat the USA 42-7 in Washington. Canada were too good for Romania in Ottawa 35-22. Samoa beat Spain 34-30 in Apia. New Zealand 24 beat England, as we know. Wales went down for a second time to Australia 36-28 in Melbourne. Georgia beating Japan in Osaka 25-23 has got implications for this weekend back in Sydney, and we'll get to that in a second. Portugal beat Namibia in Windhoek 37-22. Ireland beat South Africa, but I'm not saying it too loud.
Knock-on obstruction, infanticide, 16 people on the field, redheaded. And
Argentina beat the French touring squad 33-25 in Buenos Aires in what was Pablo Matera's 100th Test match, and he and Julian Montoya, Santiago Carreras were absolutely outstanding for Los Pumas. I mentioned Georgia there. I've seen a few highlights. They were enormous against Japan.
Yeah, I actually have thought for a while that the third match of Joe Schmidt's Wallabies might be more interesting than the first two. Just because Warren Gatland was specifically saying I'm rebuilding and just putting together kind of a scratch team. Georgia's a cohesive team. They're played it like their set pieces will be good.
Yeah, it will be. I didn't say this on Saturday night, but as soon as I saw that score from Osaka, I thought it's squeaky bum time.
Nashvili. Get prepared to be David Nashvili.
Yes, all the Billies and Bellas and all
the Georgian Tom Wright.
Yes, indeed. Portugal in South Africa will be interesting as well.
Yeah, so our friend Rian will be going there. Ringo, the
good.
mascot of the 89ers, and his wife is Portuguese. So he's been instructed that he's not allowed to be too mean to the Portuguese. So I'm looking for updates from our friend Ringo on that one.
Oh, well, I hope he's live streaming that then. That would be worth watching. That would be great. What were your big takeaways from from the weekend, apart from the fact that 3 test series should be mandatory?
Everyone should go to South Africa. One of the great drives on the N3 is to go down from Jozi, the big smoke, from the largest city, cosmopolitan city in Africa, and then kind of just go through this empty quarter where you drive through the fire. You drive through the foothills of the Drakensberg. There's strange sculptures in the middle of nowhere, wonderful little pubs. And then you rock up into Derbs, and no one even knows that there's a game on because everyone's too busy surfing and smoking some sort of thing that may or may not be legal. And this is a different vibe. Mshlanga is rocking. It's like Miami South Beach. Ran into Marco Massotti, the owner of the Sharks, and he was at dinner. And it's like just a vibe. You're just out there, like, just hanging out.
Is he the guy that let you park in under the stadium?
No, shout out to Mike Leslie, our friend from the branding department. Sharks did a really good job of hosting. The brides were on full board, every kind of cooking implement. I think you remember Mark Andrews. He was next to us having some boerewors. It was just a great, exciting time. And then the thing is that most of the people inside the stadium don't even know what's going on. Seriously, like they have no idea what's going on. But there's a bounce house. There's like a swimming pool. There's people just having fun.
Was there
good times?
Was it that game or was it another game? There was jumping castles behind the dead ball line.
Yeah, and Beast was in a rickshaw being pulled across the field. There were 3 or 4 different dancing troops of different cultural persuasions.
Okay.
The DJ has no clue either about the time or place or like the mannerisms of what's going on. It was 2 minutes to go, and it's gripping, and he's just like, ABBA's playing. You're like, what? How?
Yeah. Whoa, we're living on a prayer.
Exactly.
It was full blown. We've been mentioning for a few weeks the Major League Rugby Conference semi-finals are this weekend, July 20 and 21, which we will cover off later this week in Games of the Week, our end of week preview show, where we welcome back Bernard Jackman to preview the final week of the July tests and just probably give another eye back over the South African and Ireland.
We're in a roll of returnees right now. It's amazing.
We're on a return roll. You're right. You're absolutely right. It's another reason for you to like, follow, subscribe, and make sure you don't miss any of our returning guests. Insert break. The biggest headlines of the last 7 days, mate. Well, here's one of probably the last 10 days. In fact, I missed last week. The Western Force are going back to South Africa in September and October, where they'll play 3 games against the Cheetahs, Emerging Ireland, and not Norwich Insurance, Western Province. As part of spring tour.
Good idea.
Yeah, good idea, I think. And the Australian teams are doing end-of-year tours. We know that Queensland are going to the UK in January. The Brumbies, the ACT Brumbies, have officially handed over the keys to run the rugby side of things, the professional game in Canberra, to Rugby Australia, a la New South Wales Waratahs. And there was, I think, a certain inevitability about that. And certainly the frosty relations have melded over recent months. And so that sort of felt like it maybe wasn't as big a news as it was when the idea first broke last year. You would have liked this. Premiership champions Northampton Saints unveiled a new modernised, simplified club crest late last week, which we used for new season. The club said back in March that they'd be changing their crest, which had only been included on their kits since 1984. And that was going to be to reflect the true identity of the club. And it was immediately branded truly awful and horrendous soon after unveiling.
Nah, I think all the reactions overblown on this. I like the logo. It's simplified, easier to print. Yeah.
I don't mind it. And lastly, Ireland performance director David Humphreys has prioritised the development of Irish front row forwards, and he has closed the Irish border for overseas hookers and props for next season and beyond. So no non-Ireland qualified full-size gents. Thank you very much.
Nice, smart.
It is nice. You got a final thought for the week?
I'm actually boarding a plane right now, so I'm going to do my premature come play with us. And I'm getting on a plane. Come fly with me.
I'm going to copy that and put it at the end of the episode. You go and catch it. But that is then episode 23 of the 8-9 Combo done. Check out the show notes for the links to the 8-9 Combo on Twitter and YouTube, where you can find video versions of the podcast every week. Harry and I are on our usual places on the socials at Harry Bordy Jones and at BMC Sport. And you'll find links on our socials for Harry's written work on the Raw a couple of times a month and my Australian columns on Rugby Pass as well. This is the 8-9 Combo, the short side set piece combination you didn't realize you needed, coming from the podcast double act you already had. I'm Brett McKay. He's Harry Jones, boarding a plane. And we'll be back in your ears in a few days' time with Games of the Week. Come play with us.